So glad to be here from Model My Home, and we're excited to talk to you guys today about consultations. Consultations are so important. They set you up for success, right, Lori?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of like how we approach our consultation services, in most instances, our consultation service, I wouldn't say that they're solely reserved for some of our upper level properties, but unless it's a unique situation, if it's a unique property where we've looked at some of the photos and then we just can't really get a grasp of what's going on in the property so that we can then highlight it at its best, we will then either recommend a consultation service, or the client, either the realtor or the homeowner, will ask us to come and do an on-site visitation. But typically it's reserved for some of our upper level price points in terms of what they're anticipating to sell those properties for, or if we've got a model home that we're about to work on, or if we have like a slew of different properties that we're about to go into for like a short-term rental sort of situation. Consultations are always a must.
You don't want to get caught by surprise.
No.
That's the big thing. So even on a special project like today, we've got a church that's going out that we've done remodeling for the church.
Right.
And so those kind of things can catch you off guard. They can put you at a bad position. They can make you look bad. They can also make you not prepared because you didn't bring all the right things that you need to know. So those consultations are super important in that. And I would say always think about the resources that you have. And so if you know you're going to be making good money on it, then spend the time, do a consultation, get it done. If we're on a smaller, like she was referring to, if you're on a smaller staging project where you know it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and you can look at pictures of it, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to go do a consultation every single time you stage something, but on some projects, it's super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when we're on site, when we actually get on site to a property, there's a few different things that we wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that has helped us a lot as we kind of have sort of refined our consultation services. And one of those certainly is arriving on time because people are very busy. So arriving on time and then really getting an initial sense of what the feel is for the property. And right away, when I walk into a property, I feel like the client, either the realtor or the investor, whoever it is kind of falls into two different buckets. They're either very aware of how they want that property to show and feel, and they want it modern, or they want it contemporary, or they want it more transitional, whatever. They either like fall in that lane where they're very vocal about it, or they're like, I don't know what to do. Like,
That's
you
why
guys,
I hired you.
Yeah, you guys are the experts. I don't know what to do. So I tend to try to get in a sense. That's one of my tips is what lane are they in? Or are they actually in a lane? Do they really know what they want? Or are they really looking for us? Because then that will kind of dictate how vocal really I am or we are when we're walking through the property. So that would be my number one tip would be arriving on time. Number two would be get a sense for what lane they're in. And if that doesn't make complete sense, I'm happy to answer any questions. But and then number three is making sure that you're actually walking the property and not giving away too much information as to how you're going to actually approach the stage. For one, you want to make sure that you're going to, at the end of the day, lock in the sale, right? You want their business. And then you don't want to give away too much information, not knowing what you may or may not have back at your warehouse, so that you don't have to be out purchasing a bunch of different items and goods. So being sensitive to how much information you're giving out right at the gate, but giving a little bit of information about, yeah, I think actually we've got some great stuff that would look really wonderful in this particular space. We've got this beautiful sofa or a sectional, kind of giving some ideas there. I think for sure you could fit 5 counter height stools here. So those are kind of vague ideas about what you would do. And then I've had a lot of clients too, in terms of my 4th tip, about asking me, well, what would you do in this space right here? And they want you to answer something like kind of on the spot. And it may be a very tricky spot because I was just in a model home and there's an upstairs alley area and they want to actually showcase it as like a, what was I telling you? Like their design studio.
Yeah.
And but that's not how someone's going to live. You know, no one's going to have a design studio necessarily set up in their home once they build their own home. So they were asking me, well, how would you set this up? You know, normally I said, well, let me give that some thought. Let me go back to the warehouse. Let me talk with the team and let me give that some thought. Let me come up with some different ideas. And what we could possibly do is I can talk with Steven, who's our sales director, and come up with maybe some design boards that you could actually show your clients about how you might be able to set up this particular space so they can then get an idea, so that it's not just a little design studio set up in there. So, and then the fifth and most important thing is taking great video and great photography and getting your measurements where you need to get your measurements. We've got a lot of clients that request window treatments, where we've now just done shades for the first time in a property, but they want curtains, they want panels, they want all that kind of stuff. So if you have that one opportunity to be in the home and you think you want to recommend that particular window in that dining room is going to showcase at its best with a curtain panel on it, then get the measurements while you're in there. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is be professional, because they are buying you.
Yes.
Right? They're buying you. So be on time, look great, right? You're a designer. You don't want to show up in your, frumpy clothes or whatever. You want to look good because they're buying you. And then when they're asking you questions throughout the day, make yourself knowledgeable, make yourself an expert. That's what they're hiring you for. But you don't have to give away the farm. This is not a DIY project. You don't want them to, after you leave the house, and say, oh yeah, we can do all that ourselves. Right? That's not the idea. The idea is, I'm an expert. I've got these great ideas, and I'm going to go back with my team. That's also a great recommendation, is use that higher power to say, I've got to go back. I meet with my team. We have a whole team of designers. You're not just getting my ideas, you're getting all of our ideas. And so that way it gives you some time to go back and say, I'll finalize things, and then we'll get you some ideas either through a mood board or an inspiration board or some layouts of the actual home, right?
Yep, definitely.
Yep. And when you're in the consultation, how do you kind of, what's the approach to, if let's say they are that person that wants to do it exactly, they got the thing in mind, how do you kind of approach that?
It's actually, that one is a little bit more challenging, honestly, because I know I have a sense already of what I know we have in inventory at the warehouse, and that may not be in alignment with what they're going. So I'm like, okay, that's gonna be a lot of outsourcing of products and materials and things like that. So if they do have that, I say, yes, I agree with you. This home would showcase very, very well with a more modern contemporary aesthetic, but you might want to also think about appealing to a wide variety of potential customers, and we may not want to go further in that route. So when I come back and do my full assessment for you, I'm going to put in my recommendation that this is the route we want to go, and it's going to appeal to a wide variety of potential buyers or customers.
Yeah, and with those personality types, the main thing is you just don't want to make them wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You want to agree with them. You want to see their vision. You want to help to steer it in the right direction, knowing what inventory you have, knowing what you have to buy, that sort of thing. But you don't want to just make them wrong. Oh, no, that's a terrible idea. Just don't come across with that approach. You got to ease into it. Again, they're buying you, right? So they want to feel comfortable with their purchase.
Right.
That
And
they're getting a good
some properties just beg for, the more contemporary aesthetic. They beg for, something that's more modern and, clean lines, minimalist, all that sort of stuff. And it's just calling it. So you have to go in that direction. And if they know that too, then, hey, we're all on the same page, But most of the properties we go into, most of them are pretty more traditional, more, mainstream, wants to appeal to a wide variety of potential buyers and things like that. So
and here's a curveball for you.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky. We're talking about that personality type, but also tricky is to have a consultation on an occupied property. So talk about dealing with occupied property.
Do I have to talk about occupied properties?
You do.
I won't say it's my least favorite, but occupied properties are challenging because these are people's personal possessions. It's their home. It's where they've nested for who knows how long. They're really connected to a lot of their things. I was just in a property. It's a single guy, and I could not hide a thing in any closet, any drawer, anything. He had already taken over every space possible for me to hide anything in. So thankfully his son was there, and his son was like, Dad, you just got to get rid of some of this stuff, so that was a great buffer for me anyways. But being sensitive to the fact that, people are there, these are their worldly possessions and things like that. But the way I approach that is, since you're already moving, it might make sense to go ahead and pack up these items that I've set here for you to go ahead and just get those packed up and get those moved off into your next home, for to appeal to a wide variety of potential buyers. It probably would showcase at its best is if things are a little bit more minimal, less personal, things like that. So.
Yeah, they have such an emotional connection to everything that they've purchased. Obviously, it's theirs, and they put it there in that place for that reason.
Yes.
So maybe just picking out a few things to say, yes, this will work great, and using your artistic ability to say, yes, this will work great, and then just really pump them up with those 3 or 4 things that you're going to use that are theirs that you're so happy you get to use, and you love, and they're beautiful, right?
Yeah, the goal for that is their realtor or advisor, whoever's working with them, has almost gone through that step with them before we arrive on the property to kind of help them clean out that process. Kind of not that they're the bad guy, but kind of using them to say, hey, this needs a little bit of cleaning up before we can even come in with our goods, to kind of give it that fresh feel.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, then taking that sort of delicate approach is probably best. Yeah.
Yeah. As a realtor, I always tell them, we want people to come in and it should feel like a hotel. And a hotel feels that way on purpose because you want to come in and you want to make it yours. So you want to bring in your clothes and then it's your room. But if there's a bunch of personal things everywhere, it feels like people are looking at you or whatever,
Right.
But yeah, you want it to feel more of a hotel feel. And of course, then I hire Lori and she gets to come in and be the bad guy and put all their stuff away.
Do you mind if I just tuck a few things in the closet?
Yeah.
We might not need them out right now for the showings.
That approach works.
Yeah.
So,
and then you could actually use that as an option to say, hey, we also do design services. So when you get settled in your new place, give us a shout. We could tackle a room by room. I can get a sense right away if someone would be like so overwhelmed if we came in and said, we'll do your whole house, and redesign your whole thing, or versus we can tackle a room at a time. So it's not overwhelming, kind of get a sense for our style and kind of work together and, So
there's the marketing side of me happy. She's doing the upsell.
Yeah.
The upsell works. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. So there you go. You got any other last minute thoughts?
That's awesome. I actually have a question, and this is mostly just because we lived through the pandemic where you couldn't go out and do consultations or anything else. So a lot of people are still in that mentality of, I don't know if I'm comfortable having someone come into my space, or maybe it's somebody that's farther away than we really want to drive. So we offer that option for a virtual. So Lori, I know you've been here through that process of virtual versus in person. So what are your suggestions if you needed to pivot and do a consultation on a virtual, like a FaceTime or a Zoom? What's the best way to kind of navigate that?
Yeah. Let's be honest, they're not ideal. Doing a virtual walkthrough is not my ideal situation. I prefer to be in person if I need to be in person. But there's super efficient ways of doing a virtual walkthrough with a customer or client. And the way I approach it, because they'll initially if they have to take us on a tour of the property, they'll tend to walk super, super fast. And so there's this delay happening. So you're like, so I'll always ask them if they can also, as soon as we're done with the phone call, do you mind going back and just snapping a few pictures of that office space? There was that one wall that had the window on it. Do you mind? And I can send you a quick little short list of just some still photography that I would prefer to have in addition to this, just so I can really hone in on your space and that kind of a thing. But doing the virtual walkthrough, it's really just letting them know it's going to need to be at a slower pace. We're going to need to just walk room by room, and I just need to see each angle of the room, and then we can kind of talk about it in that vein. So if I see it as more of an office space or a master bedroom or something like that, I'll actually ask them. I'm envisioning that as a primary office location. Is that what you're envisioning as well, based off of what I can see? And so we'll have sort of more. Virtual requires a lot more of a dialogue between yourself and the client. Is just to make sure that you're hitting all the things you need to hit so that it's an efficient process.
Yeah, it's almost like a real-time 2D, because you're not really getting that full 3D view of the space.
Right.
So
if
would
there's
you say
anything-
that?
I was just saying, if there's anything you can do ahead of time, like getting a floor plan, because then as you're walking through it, at least you're kind of visualizing where you are in the house. Because I know they turn around, they turn back this way, you go that way. You're like, I have no idea where you even are now.
Yeah.
But
Most times, in
helps.
terms of doing our homework, is we'll go on to Realtor.com or Zillow or something like that. And even if it's just the previous sale of the home, at least it gives us an idea of what that property sort of looks like. And then that could be a great question: is have there been any major renovations in terms of structurally to the property since the last ownership? And so that way I can say, okay, the walls are all still the walls and the windows are all still there, kind of a thing. So that helps too.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. And I would say too, just as a recommendation, always try to book it as a Zoom that can be recorded, because you can't get that back. But if you got a recording, then you could always go back and be like, oh my gosh, what did they say in the bedroom? I know there was a wonky wall and I don't remember, So if you have the ability to record that, you can't record in real time, obviously, unless you were just recording the whole thing on your phone. But if you're able to record a virtual walkthrough through Zoom or some other platform, that's probably the best way rather than just a FaceTime call. And it seems more professional as well, because you're actually setting a time, a consultation, you're sending them an invitation to this Zoom or to whatever platform you utilize, and they're getting on, you're getting on. It's almost like a virtual appointment. So
absolutely.
And even there, like, to just also be ready to pivot with that as well. I mean, we did a walkthrough of a property, and every time she got close to a window, it like stopped. Everything would just kind of freeze on us. So we ended up having to pivot from there and say, hey, it actually makes more sense for us to come out and take a peek. So we'll be sending someone out to kind of take a look at that. So even though it may start as a virtual, there may be things that happen, that just don't make it possible for you to get the full scope of the project, that you actually do have to then say, we're going to send someone out. So
yeah. And then when you go out on those, especially on virtuals, when you haven't been there, then just make sure you're extra prepared. So because a wall that you thought would fit this beautiful couch, now when you get there, you realize, oh, it won't actually fit in that space. It's half the size. Yeah, exactly. So we always take extra bins, extra accessories and all that, but just take the time to make sure that your furniture is going to fit. And if not, then bring a couple extra things just to be safe. It's always better to take one extra couch than it is to have to come back to the warehouse and pick up more furniture and go back out there. That's
where the floor plan would come in handy, because those typically they have some room measurements where you can at least get a good idea. So I love your thought on the floor plan and looking up for the old listing pictures. All of those things are really great suggestions. Whether you're doing a virtual consultation or you're doing it in person, you can be more prepared to kind of do your homework on that on the front side and know what you're walking into versus just, showing up and being very, very surprised. Sometimes I know Lori has lots of stories. I'm sure you guys all have lots of stories. I know Daniel too, is a realtor. You've got lots of stories too.
I'm sure you've got lots.
Plenty. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys jumping on and taking the lead on this meeting. This is literally our dream in action for these training meetings.